All right. Hello, class. I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at my dashboard here to make sure that this broadcast is streaming. And it's looking like I am live. Hello, hello. How are you doing today? I'm doing okay. I have been sick with the flu, the actual flu. Got a doctor's diagnosis and everything. So I was feeling pretty crummy on Tuesday and Wednesday. But I seem to be responding well to the medicine they gave me, so I thought we could do our broadcast tonight. Hey there, Corey. How are you doing? I just saw your message in chat. That's awesome. Um, guess my viewer counter hasn't updated yet, but yep, yep. Truth Warrior. Hello, to whoever you are. We'll figure out. I'll figure out your real name eventually. Um, But yeah, I feel well enough to do a live broadcast tonight, so we're going to try to go through it as best we can. Let's see, some things to get out of the way first. This PowerPoint I'm about to go through is already posted on Blackboard. Um, so it's there under the course content. It'll be located underneath all of the surveys. Um, and that's going to be true for any of the PowerPoints that I go over. I will post them the day of the broadcast, though, generally. Um, so that way I'm not flooding you with like a whole semester worth of content all at once. Um, and sometimes some PowerPoints might take us a couple broadcasts to get through. So some weeks there just might be, um, if you're not watching this live, some weeks you might wonder why there's not a new posting. That would be why. It's because the live broadcast hasn't gotten through all of the PowerPoint the first time. So anyway, I do try to limit these to about 45 minutes or less. I don't want to take up too much of your evenings or your time. Um, hey there, is it Adore? I want to make sure that I'm pronouncing that correctly. Um, um, yeah, so as you can tell, there is also a delay in the Punky Deaton, welcome. Um, Glad to see you here as well. I'm feeling much better. Anyway, try to limit these to about 45 minutes so I don't take up all of your time. With that spirit in mind, I'm probably going to go ahead and we'll just go right through the agenda. And the first thing on our agenda today is to talk about the human communication process, which is the meat of the content in Chapter 1. I'll go over the discussion board assignment, and I'll talk about some the very rudimentary directions for our first speaking assignment. Right before I start with that, though, I know that might have some anxiety for a lot of you. The first speaking assignment coming so soon in the semester, but really the point of that assignment, guys, is just to get you to um, figure out where you can videotape yourself. Um, to get you used to the idea of speaking to a camera because at an online class that is fortunately, depending on your perspective, what you have to do. It really is just a simple little assignment just to get you to get some practice with the technology, get you some practice with talking to the camera, and practice or at least going through the steps of trying to upload it so that I can view it. It really is just kind of a completion type assignment, but it's worth some substantial points as well. So you want to make sure that you do it. And it's very important because by practicing those things and figuring those things out, that'll lay the groundwork for other speeches. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about. All right, excellent. Glad that I got your name correct there, Adore. um, Okay, so the human communication process. This is the kind of the meat of the content of your first chapter. And the chapter did talk about a couple models of human communication, but um, are we advancing the slide? There we go. Always got to have some kind of little hiccup there. I was clicking outside my broadcaster. Okay, so communication. What is it? Um, Here's some situations here that we can kind of talk about here as being part of communication. A girl bats her eyes at a frat boy from across the room. Um, I think a lot of us have seen that at certain parts in our lives. Maybe not a frat boy, but maybe in high school we had people that were flirting with each other, or maybe in the office. The good old batting of eyes. That's something we would call nonverbal communication, using body language to communicate perhaps interest in somebody from across the room. Um, Barack Obama gives an address about universal health care. Again, that's something that people would say is a dead giveaway for communication because it's a public address. But these other situations aren't quite so clear cut. Um, how about a student slouching in his chair during class? That is, for lack of a better um, word, that is communication as well. And that's one reason why some teachers take that posture seriously. It's not really because they're some uptight jerkwad, although they might be an uptight jerkwad. Um, but the nonverbals inquired with that is part of communication. It's giving a message to the person that's seeing that, regardless of whether that mention is intended or not. And sometimes, people that slouch in their chair, they might just be comfortable. Um, and so sometimes I think people overreact to the whole slouching in chairs thing, but that's neither here nor there. Let's go ahead and keep going here. And the last example, a child watches a program about prehistoric giant whales. Sometimes when I talk about human communication, sometimes people, much like watching this kind of a presentation on YouTube, even, people will doubt that it's actually communication because they're like, well, communication involves interaction. In fact, it's a continuous, ever changing process of interaction, as the textbook says. And there's no interaction with somebody with a pre recorded, of course, this is a live broadcast, but with a pre recorded video being sent out over the airwaves. That's not real communication. That's just watching, that's being a spectator. But that's not correct either. Anytime there is messages being exchanged, even if it's a one-way exchange, it's not truly one way. Um, that child in front of that television watching that program about whales, that documentary, they're going to be positioned a certain way. They maybe will be totally focused on it and use their body language to communicate to the television, which of course is not capable of processing the message, but they're communicating that they are interested in it non-verbally. So no matter what, you're kind of interacting, going back and forth with the message and the people who are sending it, regardless of whether or not they can see it. That's kind of one of the things that we need to um, consider when we talk about planning our speeches is that there's going to be, especially in this online class, there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to want to do to get a reaction out of your audience, but unfortunately, you're not going to be present to gauge that reaction. And that can be, for some of you, that might seem like a great, that might be a relief um, if you have a lot of anxiety. Others of you might actually be distressed by that because you really do rely on, you rely on people smiling at your corny jokes in order to feel like you're doing a good job. And when you're deprived of that, it can be rather disturbing. That's kind of the category that I fall in. So I feel your anxiety if you're in that category as well. But anyway, communication is a process of interaction, and you really can't stop it. Um, it's always there. It's continuous, and that's what they mean by continuous. So communication does have a certain anatomy to it. We're going to kind of go through these little these parts here. We call this the SMCR model, and let's see if I can get my pointer on here. You can see why it's called the SMCR model. Each letter in that phrase there stands for the beginning letter of each of these ideas here. Source, message, channel, and receiver. And this is kind of where people, um, parts of this model are very direct. Other parts of this model can sometimes be a little confusing. So we'll be sure to I have a little activity for us, those of us who are watching live, that we can talk about and try to parse out the confusion that might occur. But Let's go ahead and just talk about each of these ideas real quick. The source is the composer of a message, and that is the source. Sometimes people do get this idea confused with where the message is coming from. So in our previous example, let's go ahead and go back here. On this idea right here, a child watches a program about prehistoric giant whales. The source of that message is not the television set. The source of that message is whoever composed that documentary or that documentary about whales. Right? So that particular example might have multiple authors to it, but that's the idea. The source is someone who composes the message. It's not the medium through which the message is experienced. The next part of the model kind of gets is a little confusing as well. I guess there's um, anyway. I in my little cold medicine induced fog there, I kind of rambled on. Let's go ahead and the message is a discrete chunk of communication, which can be as an article, a song. However, it is not the main idea, and I mention that because colloquially we'll say things like, "Do you get the message?" Meaning, "Do you understand what I mean?" But unfortunately, for us, when we talk about a message in this class or for the purposes of planning our speech, um, the message is actually just referring to a chunk of communication. In other words, um, kind of the actual speech, what you're trying to say. A discrete chunk has that meaning of it has a beginning and a middle and an end, right? You can tell where it's beginning and where it's end. It's The communication is continuous, but messages are not. Messages do conclude, and then people will wait for feedback. And it's that feedback that keeps the communication process continuous. But the messages will come to an end eventually. So a message is just something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, um, and it is not the main idea, right? So going back to our previous example here, maybe the main idea of this documentary about prehistoric giant whales is, wow, whales are cool. Like that's the thesis of the program. But that's not really the message. The message is the entire hour-long program. That's what the message is. It's the entire thing that the source composed. It's not the meaning or the thesis of what the author composed. I know colloquially we'll say things like, you get the message, or um, meaning, do you understand what I mean? But that's not how this is meant to be taken. The next part is the channel, the C in the SMCR. And this is the sense through which a message is accepted. So, for example, if you were reading a newspaper, the channel would be through sight, and a song would be through hearing. All right, so it really is one of the five senses. Um, Sometimes, the touch is also a valid channel. That's why there's the Braille alphabet, for people who are visually impaired. Um, there's also cultures that communicate messages through taste, by preparing certain foods or by adding ingredients to certain foods. Um, they can communicate whether or not they welcome you into their home or whether they don't welcome you into their home. It's kind of an interesting study. There are well, we'll talk more about this idea later in the semester, but there's this idea called high context cultures, in which a lot of the messages are not verbal; they're nonverbal. And some high context cultures, rather than saying, get off my property, they might offer you some tea that tastes very rancid, and that's the message: get the heck out of my house. And through context, you're supposed to figure that out. But anyway, so messages can be experienced pretty much through any channel, or let's not use the word in the definition. It can be experienced through any of the human senses: hearing, sight, touch, taste, and smell. Um, our culture, of course, is a Western European heritage culture with some smatterings of others, of course. It is a multi ethnic society, but primarily we communicate through verbal messages. We're very explicit. Now, we might be very figurative in our verbal language, but we are a very verbal culture. And finally, here we have the receiver, which is the audience of a message. I also notice here that it does not say the intended audience of a message. A receiver is pretty much any person that, well, receives the message through one of their channels. All right, so someone listening to this broadcast coming through your computer speakers, walking past your dorm room, that is a receiver of the message, um, even though I have no plans to include them in that at all. All right. Um, I'm still logged into my Skype from earlier. Someone just sent me a message. I hope you didn't hear that. Okay, so there are other terms in this anatomy of interaction. There's some verbs here. When we call sources, the people who compose messages, that process is called encoding or to encode. It means to attribute meaning to symbols or actions to convey a message. Because remember, sometimes food or smells can also be a message. Um, but at any time someone is composing a message, they are encoding things. They're trying to attribute meaning to symbols. Even when I'm speaking to you through this microphone, I am encoding meaning in the noises that I am making with my mouth, right? We call them words, but really they're just noises that I'm making with my mouth. Um, and those noises are symbolic of thoughts or meaning that I'm trying to take out of my brain and shove into yours. Now, receivers do the other process. They decode messages. The process of looking at symbols, or in this case, hearing symbols or actions to interpret meaning from a message. So, if everything goes well, I encode the message with a symbol that people recognize and have a good understanding of. It takes that thought from my brain, puts it into a symbol. You look at the symbol, you hear the symbol, and you decode it, and the meaning or the idea is now in your brain. Now, sometimes that process of encoding and decoding gets kind of snarled up in the middle, and that's what we call noise, right? And it comes in two varieties: internal and external noise. And noise, in terms of the human communication model, is any kind of interference that gets in the way of an accurate encoding and or decoding of the message. So noise can literally be something like, well, a loud noise, like maybe there's you're listening to your furnace really go along right now because it's winter and it's nighttime and it's loud, and your computer is right next to where your furnace is located, and you're hearing it rattle and you're hearing the pipes bang around. That is some kind of interference, because if it distracts you from decoding the message, it's acting as noise. And in this case, it would be something we call external noise, because the noise is coming from something outside of your own body, right? Now, internal noise, by process of elimination, then, is noise or interference that comes from inside your body. And usually it's what we call a physiological source. So, for example, maybe it's 7:50 p.m. Maybe you're sleepy, and you're thinking about how great it would be to go to bed and how relaxing it is to just look at a screen with just one slide on it, and the content's kind of dry, the voice is kind of low, time to get sleepy. That kind of, and then you start to nod off, and you can't quite, you miss some words here and there, and you kind of lose track of things. That would be internal noise, right? It's not literally noise, but it is a kind of interference that keeps you from understanding the message. Um, So that would be internal noise. So anytime maybe you're hungry, you're sleepy, you're hot, you're cold, um, you are in pain, um, anything like that that kind of distracts you, that is internal noise. And external noise, again, is a little bit more literal. It's things out in the environment, outside of your body, outside of your mind, that keep you from understanding the message. We'll have an example. And then we have this idea of feedback. It's a verbal or perhaps nonverbal reaction to a message. And this is how communication stays continuous. No matter what's going on right now, even though I cannot see how you're sit in your seat, I can't see what you're doing, you are reacting somehow to this message. Maybe some of you are taking notes, maybe others of you are nodding off, and maybe some others of you have gone to the kitchen to make a sandwich. Any of those situations is feedback about the communication or the message that you are receiving, and can be interpreted. If I was there to experience it, I could therefore interpret it and get some kind of meaning back, and then I would react to that feedback with feedback of my own, and then we kind of ping pong back and forth. That's how it stays continuous. So here's a quote unquote quiz. So those of us who are watching live, let's see how we do. Um, for each interaction, let's try to identify the source, message, receiver, channel, and noise. And I have to remind myself at this point, too, that I have to be extra patient because there is a delay between what I'm saying and when you hear it. And of course, there's going to be a delay between when you hear it and got to think about your response, and then you got to write it into chat. So there might be some mysterious dead air if you're watching this later. But that's because I'm waiting for the delays to subside. So anyway, let's look at our first interaction here, and this interaction is a poster. So let's go ahead and let's say for this poster, people in chat, what would the source of this message be? I'm still here. It does get very quiet. We'll wait until we get some kind of response in the chat. All right. Meg LaFollette says Canada. That's good. I don't see what Elizabeth Lynch. I didn't see what you wrote before you retracted your message. Um, Corey, I think you're one step ahead of us. But we'll get to that in a second. Um, so yeah, I would say that the source of the message or the composer of the message is Canada. Um, Now, um, the next question I was going to ask was going to be the channel. Yes, Corey, you're correct. You answered the question, what's the channel? And that would be the visual channel. You're correct. It's a poster. There's no auditory cue here, or you certainly can't touch it or taste it. Um, so you got that correct. So let's see. Now, what is the message? Here's the this is the question that trips people up. I want to see how good we're doing. What's the message in this poster? Or rather, I should say, what's the message of this slide on this slide here? Cannot read the message. Okay, well, Meg LaFollette, you are correct. I like your name, Meg. It just rolls right off the tongue. And this is kind of where the confusion comes in. Meg, you are correct. The message is the poster, the entire poster. Um, it's not necessarily the intended meaning of the text on it, because there's also other information here. Um, there's a polar bear, um, and a polar bear cub, and there's also information here at the bottom. That's all part of the message that this poster is trying to get across. So the message is the entire poster itself. And that's one thing that we need to condition ourselves for in society in general, is that messages aren't just the spoken words that we hear, and they're not just the text that maybe is on the screen. It's how the text is arranged, how the words are said, um, what's going on in the B-roll. If you're watching maybe like a documentary or even a news show, and they show what we call B-roll, which are images they kind of overlay on some narration. Um, all of that has meaning. That's part of the message. They're trying to encode something to get you to decode something. So the message is the entire poster itself. So that was very good, Meg. Um, and but you guys are not wrong, or rather, I should say, you folks. I get yelled at sometimes because I always say you guys. That was my generation, was you guys, to refer to a group of people. But anyway, you all that said Canada a cool place to do research, and then slash uh, un excellent pour the blah, blah. I took Latin. I did not take French. So I apologize for butchering that. Yeah, that is part of the message. I would definitely give you some solid partial credit for that. But don't forget that there is some text underneath here. There's a web address, it looks like, here, and a symbol over here. And this is all part of the message as well as the picture of the polar bear. So that's it. Sounds like yeah, it sounds like it's a trick question, but it kind of isn't. Or, well, it kind of is, I should say. But remember, whenever anytime I ask you what the message was, it's pretty much everything in totality. It's the whole poster. All right, so we did pretty good with that. And again, the visual channel. So who's the receiver of this message? Let's see if we can identify that. Who's the receiver of this message? I'm still here, don't worry. I should start getting like a background track to this. Maybe that oh gosh, what's that tune? Hear it all the time on, really scholarly. It's usually used on comedy shows, but they want to give that really scholarly impression. So someone's maybe reading like A Tale of Two Cities, and in the background there's this musical track like do 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 do. Do, 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 do. I need to look up that song and play it quietly in the background so that people know that the broadcast is going. Yeah, Elizabeth, you are correct, and Corey, you're correct too. Anyone who sees it slash anyone who's reading it, um, anyone who's reading it. Yes, so excellent. Now here's the next part, and this might have a lot of different answers. So I'm interested to see what you guys will pick out. Um, Considering this poster here, what might be some sources of noise? And yes, we'll still call it noise. I know it's a visual channel, but again, any type of interference with a message is considered noise. Excuse me, I had to cough there. Any kind of interference is considered noise. So, what might be some noise associated with this poster, with this message here? Okay, random thoughts of the viewer. Yeah, any kind of you're sitting here and the audio goes dead and it's a white poster on a white background. It's kind of boring. Start thinking about other things. Definitely, that's noise. By speaking, okay, that's no. Yeah, I like to ramble on. Oh, yep, that's good noise. Good, Meg. Your dog's barking. Yep, that's noise. Yep, anything again, even though this is a visual message, those auditory things still can count as noise. Now I am going to go. Okay, you're 9 month old. All right, that's good noise, and of course, thinking about your 9 month old, that's going to be some noise for a while. Even if you're not hearing your 9 month old. Now I'm going to go on a bit of a fishing expedition. What might be some more visual noise that's going on this poster here? Think about the visual noise might be going on. I know that maybe doesn't make a lot of sense when I say it that way, but I'm trying to give you a hint. I'm going to go on a fishing expedition. See if I can get someone to think about it. What might be uh, a problem visually with this poster? There you go. Liz and are you Elizabeth or Liz? I'm gonna mix that up until I know. But Elizabeth and Corey and Punky, you've got it all correct. It's the fact that this stuff down here is blurry and are hard to read. There's also some smudges. It looks blurry over here. Um, I can see on my monitor, probably because I don't have a distortion because of the broadcast, but this is powdered snow. But you're right. This looks like a blurry smudge here. Um, but especially this writing here that's blurry slash too small. That would also be considered noise. Um, Also, the flowers. Okay, Adore, thank you for that. I never knew that. I go by either Liz or Liz. Is there one that you prefer? Um, I will call you whatever you prefer. But anyway, yes, you're correct. This is this is a source of noise. And one of the reasons why I have this example as our first example is because a lot of times when people create their visual aids, and we will be talking more about visual aids in the future, but I want to really hammer this in. Um, on my screen, this looks fairly okay, but once you start broadcasting it, and once it gets the resolution starts to get downscaled, and there starts to get some interference, and I mean interference as in literal, like, distortion of the image. This text this small cannot be read. You have to make sure that everything on your PowerPoints or your visual aids, especially if you're going to be recording them, need to be large and in charge to make sure that you can see them. Because right now on my screen, this looks fairly decent. Um, it's like this is the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada. That's what that says right there. But I darn well, pretty sure that you probably can't see that. Um, and even if you could, it's still too small. Again, on principle, you need to make sure everything's pretty big. Even this text right here is borderline too small. Things need to be kind of fairly large and in charge, like this. It's very pops right off the screen, very large. Anyway, but that's I wanted to start that lesson early. But you're right. Anything that's blurry there is good. Now I'm looking at the time here, and it's 35 minutes in, and I do have other things that I want to get to. But there are two other examples here that you can kind of look at. Um, One of these is they're both onion things, um, and they one's a radio report, the other one's a television report. And I might include these links in a different activity that we might do next week just to make sure that you get them. For now, I think I'm going to end the PowerPoint. And we're going to switch gears a little bit and go into Word. And I'm going to make sure that we have what I need. Um, yeah, we need to go over your discussion board assignment first. Let's do that. That's a higher. So where is my link? There we go. Here's the link to Blackboard. All right. So um, the how to do a discussion assignment is pretty easy. So what you would do is, I already see I'm already a bad teacher. I went all the way into step 2 already. Okay, so you open up our Blackboard, um, and you go to the discussion tab, and there will be a discussion pretty much each week. Sometimes there won't be one. Usually, when I assign a speech or I assign like a outline, I try to get you to do some kind of written work every week. Um, so, but anyway, so the discussion board for this week is already posted, the SMCR discussion. So you would click on that. Um, and of course, it says no items found. Oh no. Now, let's see again. Cold medicine. I'm blaming this on the cold medicine. The description of the assignment is going to be under the right next to the forum that I've created. So, this one has two parts, part one and part two. And this is a pretty typical format as well for a discussion assignment I'll give you. So in part one, I have you just kind of respond to a prompt. And this time I kind of have three prompts here for you. Um, One is often people describe communication as being like a tube of toothpaste. Um, Using what you know about the communication process, do you feel that communication is like a tube of toothpaste now? Why or why not? So you would say, okay, I'm going to create a thread that answers these three questions. So you would hit here. We're the first people to do it. So you would hit the create thread button, and this will bring up this interface here. You type yourself a subject. Your name is already associated with it, so you don't need to write your own name as the subject. Um, you can just simply title it really what kind of whatever you want. Um, try to make it somewhat serious, guys. SMCR toothpaste and such. And so I would answer each of the three questions in this post, 1, 2, and 3. And then I will create it. I'm just going to go ahead and say blah, blah, blah. And these are questions that are supposed to get you to think. They're not necessarily questions that have a right or wrong answer to them. All right, they're just trying to get you to think about them. Um, so I answered it, and there you go. See, I can see when you posted it. I can see what your thread title is, and so I kind of know what it is, and I see who did it and whether it's published and how many total posts are in there. So later, when we go back, let's go back to the discussion page here. Later, when we do part 2, which is due on next Friday, reply to 2 other students' threads. I can tell who's had people replied to them or not. And it does say here, try to give a priority to people who have not yet had a response. So if you're logging in on, say, Thursday afternoon, and you get to this screen here and you notice that Dallas Pike here um, has like 4 posts in his thread, and I don't know, Jeremy Smith has only 1 post in his thread. Try to look at Jeremy Smith's thread and give him some a reply if you can, please. That way, because sometimes what happens is if people don't do that, I got SMCR toothpaste and such winds up with 19 posts, and then there's a bunch of other threads that you created that only have 1 post. Does that kind of make sense? You don't want that. I would like for everybody to kind of have some discussion about their ideas. So try to give a priority to people who don't have any responses yet on their threads. So if it already says like total posts like 3 or 4, uh, pass that on and go to someone else's thread. That way we can try to get as many people responding as possible. Okay. So that's kind of how you would do a discussion thread in a nutshell. Again, it's very simple. You kind of look at it. The directions are right here. When you're ready to respond, just click on it, create your thread, type out your initial response, and then a bit later, go back and reply to someone else's if you can. I also want to bring your attention to because I broke it up into two parts with two different due dates. So part one is due on Wednesday, next Wednesday, January 25th. I think that's the correct date, by 11:59 p.m. And that's when I'll wake up the following morning. So if you write it on Thursday, January 26th at 3 a.m., I'm not going to punish you in any way. All right. I'm not going to sit up here at midnight and make sure everyone's got their stuff in. Right? It's just a way to make sure that you get it in by the end of the day. Um, anyway, that's a question I'm asked sometimes. Um, anywho, so would be due on Wednesday, and the next part would be due on Friday. And again, that's just to make sure that we're not all rushing at the end to get all the threads together, which is sometimes what happens in an online class. I kind of learned my lesson from last semester, and I'm trying to structure these a little bit better with different due dates. Um, and again, I've given you a good bit of time to do this. Partly because I've been sick and haven't given you a written a written assignment for the week yet, but also because um, I want to make sure that you all have plenty of time to get the book. Again, the PowerPoint and the video hopefully will give you enough information to answer these questions, and we can kind of move on from there. But I wanted to give you time to get the books as well. Um, and again, okay, so that's pretty much it. Any questions about the discussion assignment before I move on to our last item on our agenda? Do you want to try to keep this around 45? We might go to 50 minutes, but that's going to be it, I think. Not seeing any questions in chat so far. Oh, wait, there's one. There are weekly discussions, two per week, and we need to respond to two as well as create our own. Um, Not necessarily that much. I've kind of front loaded it a little here, but generally there'll be two parts to it, Corey. There'll be one where you respond to a prompt, and maybe one where you just kind of respond once to another person. Um, Other times, maybe we'll have one discussion that goes across multiple weeks. Um, and Adora, you asked how many people do you need to respond to? Written out here, it says reply to two other students' threads. Um, Mostly it's because yeah, the directions, and it's not there's no number here. That can be confusing, I know. There. So yeah, reply to for this week. Reply to two other students' threads. So discussions will be modeled vaguely like this, Corey. Not there'll be like two parts with maybe two different due dates. Sometimes maybe one part will be due on Wednesday of that week, and then the next part will be due an entire week later. Um, it's not going to be so jam packed, or at least as what this might seem like. I don't want you to feel like I'm going to have you write until your hands fall apart. um, in fact, the writing for this class will eventually, as we get further along in the semester, most of the writing you'll do is going to be in outline format, writing outlines for your speeches and so forth. We'll start to move away from discussions a little bit, at least in terms of intense writing out a couple questions, writing a couple responses. And again, one of the reasons why this seems kind of intense is that it's not necessarily a very intense discussion, at least in my experience with it before. It's really just a couple lines per post, so it shouldn't hopefully be that bad. Just something to get you started on and getting you in the swing of things. And you know what? If the amount of writing just you seem to be drowning in it, I'm one of those very adaptive instructors. If you say, "Hey, man, this is 9 pages of writing a week. That's crazy." No, I'll never ask you to do 9 pages of writing in a week. But you can say, "Man, this work is getting pretty intense." I might be able to scale it back a bit. By might, I will find a way to scale it back a bit. I mean, there are some assignments that we have to do. For example, each speech does need an outline. I'm required to collect an outline from you, so I can't like give you a pass on things like that. But anyway, go ahead and humor me and try to go for the full discussion here. I don't think I think you'll find that it's probably more interesting to read and see people's responses and give responses yourself than it might suggest. Okay, that was a good question though. But yeah, this is a general format: 2 parts, 2 different due dates. Usually a main prompt followed by a respond to another student's. But that's the basic of it. Is it going to be 2 other students each time? Nah, that's just because this particular discussion is kind of short. And it's just good to get everybody a reaction from somebody. So that's why I have 2 student responses there. Okay. And again, if you have any other questions, we also have live lectures weekly. Yes, pretty much, Corey. That is the plan. Well, I want to do live broadcasts like this one pretty much every week. Um, Now, obviously, like spring break, and again, I know that a lot of you are online. Maybe you're off campus. You don't know necessarily when spring break is. I will definitely put an announcement on Blackboard when you can expect spring break. But generally speaking, yeah, we'll have one once a week. But spring break, for example, we won't have one. Um, Maybe on weeks where you have larger speeches due, like the informative speeches or the persuasive speeches. I want to give you the whole week to work on it because I know that some of you might only have like 1 or 2 hours a night to work on this class. I don't want to take up one of your evenings with a live broadcast when you could be working on your speech. But generally, yes, once a week, I will do this. And if we need to do this more than once a week, we can investigate that too. Okay, yeah, no, Punky, I did not. I did not speak it yet. Okay, that helped a lot. Good, excellent. Again, if you have any more questions as time goes on, there is a delay, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to talking about the directions to the first speech. And the first speech directions are pretty simple. All right, and this is kind of like any kind of icebreaker activity. Let's go ahead and blow up the view here. I am going to post this on Blackboard as well, but as you can see, I haven't written it yet. But it's kind of the standard icebreaker activity, and I do a slightly different one for each section, just so that your speeches are slightly different, so that I can look at them and not kind of go crazy. But it's the introduction speech, right? And really, for the introduction speech, I'm not even looking for a time limit. I just want you to answer 3 questions about yourself. Um, one of those questions is, tell the class, and again, these are going to we're tell the class your name, um, where you are from, um, and what your major is. And if you're not undecided, um, if you are undecided, tell everyone what your favorite class or perhaps your favorite hobby is. I mean, it happens. Some people are not decided yet. In my experience, online students are just a little bit more decided than my on-campus students, but sometimes we do meet those people that haven't got a major yet, and that's fine. No judgment from me. But to fill in that part of the speech, go ahead and tell us something about what you like about class, or what you're not what you like about class, what you like about Ball State, or what you like about your hobby or whatever. Um, Second part is Um, I would like for you to explain why you chose your major, a favorite class, hobby. Right. So again, that's kind of related to the first question. And then there's only one extra part left, and that is, and I've already asked you this question before, but only I have seen your responses. Um, so this is where we share with the group. So, um, and you don't necessarily have to use the same fact, but talk about one interesting fact about you that isn't related to responses. In other words, if your favorite class is, I don't know, trombone, um, don't say, well, one interesting fact about me is that I can play trombone. Pick something else to do that. So by the end of the speech, you'll have told us your name, where you're from, what your major is, and then you'll explain to us what your favorite class or your hobby is, or why you chose that to talk about, or why you find it interesting, right? And then you'll tell us just kind of some kind of a random interesting thing about yourself. Again, it's pretty standard boilerplate kind of icebreaker type material. Again, the point of this assignment isn't to um, give you a tour de force in your first speech assignment in your rhetoric skills. It's to just get you used to finding a place to put your camera or your computer or your iPad or your Surface or whatever you're going to use to record yourself. Find a place to put it, get used to talking to it, and uploading it. Now, so that's what the speech is supposed to be about. How to turn in your speech by, well, of course, step one is to record your remarks. Um, I should probably mention too. Um, feel free to use a paper for notes. We're not quite to the point where I've told you how to use note cards or anything. So use whatever you need. If you need notes for this, or if you just need to hold up a piece of paper that has these questions or these prompts on it, knock yourself out. So feel free to use paper for notes. So record your remarks on some kind of a camera on your device. Um, Next, you should. Where's my little handy dandy? There we go. Looking for this. So you record your remarks on your device, um, and then you should upload or locate your digital file of your speech. Now, this is where we need to think about how you're going to upload it. There's going to be two options for you. Upload it to YouTube with your YouTube account, and send me the link through email. And I showed you last week how to email me. The other way that you could do this is you could um, try to submit speech by uploading it directly Blackboard. Um, and I will show you what that might look like right now. So it'll be up to you to decide which one it is. And of course, if one doesn't work, you can always try the other one. Now, historically, my students have had the most success with this one. YouTube is owned by Google, and Google is pretty darn reliable. And it works pretty much with every browser, even though they really try to push Chrome. Now, Blackboard, on the other hand, it has some serious prejudice against Safari. I just don't understand it. Files don't get uploaded, and that's on my end too. Like, I suffer from the Safari prejudice as well. So my advice is probably to go with YouTube, but I will, for every assignment that we have like this, for every speech assignment, I will create a link on Blackboard. I'm going to go ahead and create the link now in front of you so that you can see that I'm doing it. I will go to the course content section. I'll create an assignment. I don't have these buttons, but this will be the intro speech Speech upload. The due date, gosh. Have that be due like 2 Mondays from now. That's not even going to be. Let's see, what is it going to be 2 Mondays from now? Let's see. Saturday is the 28th. Sunday is the 29th, right? Yeah, I'll say the 30th. It's supposed to be a Monday. And let's have that be at the end of the day. Awesome. It's, that's 50 points. I really should check. I'll correct it if I get it wrong. But anyway, here's your intro speech upload. When you click on it, it brings you to this interface. It's not you can't do it. It's a speech. You can't do a text submission. So you would attach a file, and you would click Browse My Computer. You would navigate to your digital file, which is step number 2 here. And then this is how you would upload it. And then once it's uploaded, you would hit the submit button. And in theory, guys, it should be good. I see some questions. Okay. Need to be written out or just done as a video? Punky, it just needs to be a video for right now. Yeah, it just needs to be a video. And Adore, it doesn't matter if it's unlisted or public to me. As long as I can view it, that is fine. And if you want to, again, this assignment is to kind of test the settings that you might have in YouTube. That's one of the purposes of it. So if you send me a link and I can't watch it, one of the purposes of this assignment is to, kind of get that issue identified before we get into maybe a more intense speech that I'm going to be under the gun to evaluate in a more rigorous manner. Yeah, so it doesn't matter. You need to have an audience in the videos for this speech. Leslie, for this particular speech, no. And depending on how practical it is, I may require us to have an audience for maybe our first like super serious speech, but it would only be like 3 to 4 to 5 people, 5 people max. I know that it's very difficult to find an audience as an online student. On one side, I can understand why people kind of resent that requirement. On the other side, there's a lot of stuff in this class that deals with getting feedback from people, not just in the conceptual idea of the SMCR model type of feedback, but one of the parts of our assignments is to collect feedback from an audience member. Now, it is possible, and I'm kind of hesitant to bring this up, but I'm going to do it anyway. Cold medicine, remember. I might experiment with maybe on one of our informative speech assignments, I might experiment with the idea of inviting your classmates to watch your video as opposed to just me watching it. And they could be your audience, quote unquote audience. So that's a possibility. All right. It's going to really depend on. Again, this is something that we'll evaluate. I'll ask you about it. I'll do a little. I guess we'll call it a survey a little bit later in a couple weeks that talks about whether or not you feel like you can get a group together to record your speeches. But for right now, no one needs to be here. You can just you and your camera. So, but don't worry about that right now. I really just want to feel out how practical it is for you guys, and then plan accordingly. And again, it might be that I just require you to watch a classmate's speech on YouTube or something, and you will be their peer audience evaluator. And Corey, that's a good, interesting question. That is a good question. Right now, the way that I taught the class before, it was all recorded. And another question I'm often asked related to that is, do I limit the number of recordings you're allowed to do? Well, no, because number one, that seems unreasonable. But number two, I mean, let's think about it. I don't know how many times you recorded your speech. There's no way I could ever police that. maybe that comes from an impression from some kind of another person's or another professor's class where he tries to limit. And I don't know who this would be actually, but I have heard rumors that people try to limit how many submissions you're allowed to do. Um, as long as the due date hasn't passed, you can submit as many copies as you can. I don't care. Right? So record it as many times as you need to. Try if you want to get that perfect recording, go for it. I do not expect perfection to get like a literal A. Um, but if you want to go for it, if you're recording your speech and your dog jumps up into your lap and knocks you out of your knocks all your notes down and totally interrupts your speech, go ahead and stop and record a new one or that. Sometimes students ask if they can edit, like do some post production. Now that I would say I would prefer that you not do. So if you have to start over, please do start over. Don't make what we call a rough cut with Windows Movie Maker. Um, Number one, that is kind of easy to detect, and number two, um, I don't know. It seems more like we want to keep the class so that it's equivalent to campus. So on campus, I will generally let a student start their speech over if they have a major interruption. So I'm going to give you the same courtesy. If you're recording your speech, go ahead and start over if you get interrupted. But otherwise, please don't try to go into post production or add any special effects or anything of production value to you. This is amateur video hour. So, any other questions? And again, I know the assignment is kind of, I don't know if I call it vague, but it's very simple, very direct. Um, and yeah, one of the things I might do next week in our live broadcast, since it's going to fall way before the due date, um, is I might show you how to upload a video to YouTube. I'd feel tempted to do that now, but it's an hour. I'm already an hour into this, so I think I need to let you guys just kind of process the information you've been given, and we'll reconvene during the regular live broadcast time next week if you be there. And the answer to that, Corey, is a little bit yes and a little bit no, but mostly no. um, oh yeah, Adore. There's no time limit on this. Just answer the three questions. I expect your speech to be 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Probably 2 minutes is as far as you're gonna get. But I guess it just depends on how long you want to talk for this one. Really, just do all three questions. Um, but that's a good question, Corey, and I didn't quite cover that in my last live recording. Um, was no, there won't be a. I'm not really following that schedule in the workbook. Um, each week I try to give you a schedule or at least a preview of what's happening next. Now this week that quite didn't happen because of my illness. Um, I just man I could not. You can probably tell too that I ramble a lot in general, but the medicine is really getting to me. So this week's a little bit light on the details. Sorry about that. But no, we were not really following the schedule. Well, you'll notice that we kind of do follow the same pattern, but don't rely on it for anything. For next week, yeah, this would be something that'd be I would want you to really work on for next week. This particular video, and one of the reasons I'm going to give you, I'm assigning it today, but it's not going to be due until like 2 Mondays from now because it's not due until Monday, January 30th. Simply because I know it's going to take a while to put this together. Um, Maybe for a lot of us who are technologically inclined, recording a couple minute video and slapping it on YouTube and sending the link to somebody is just a piece of cake. For others, it might take a long time. We're coming at this class with a various familiarity with technology, and from the survey I took, not a lot of us have experience using YouTube or even using the webcam to record a video. Um, So one of the things I want to cover my live broadcast next week is how to really to do that in some detail. How you would upload it to YouTube. How you would um, find a program to record your video with if you don't have one. But that doesn't mean you can't start working on it, and as in figuring out your answers to the question, trying to find a good place for your camera, that kind of stuff. You can definitely get started on this week or in the next couple days. Yes, Punky. Um, I will post what's due and the announcements each week. And kind of like what I did, I can go back to our announcements here. Kind of show you this kind of format here. This is kind of long and wordy too, but um, I'll kind of list out what's going on that week, and then towards the bottom here, I give like a week 2 preview of what's going to happen. So you can see here, I will challenge you on Monday to the SMCR model and your understanding of internal and external noise to help you plan out your first speech, which is the speech of introduction. Oh, and I call it the introduction speech. See that inconsistent language use? But anyway, this speech will be assigned next Monday, which meant this past Monday. I kind of forgot it was MLK Day as well. I can't blame the cold medicine for that one. I just get into a pattern. Anyway, and I will try to model it for you as an example, and that'll ultimately be done. I'll do that next broadcast. Again, we're kind of running long, but I do want to answer all of your questions. And Punky, don't worry about missing anything. If you feel like you might be missing something, send me an email, and I will get to you as soon as I can. Um, and I can also keep track of when you're logged in to Blackboard. Big brother is here. It does tell me on my class roster. I can't pull it up because it brings up a lot of sensitive information, but it will tell me when you've last logged into Blackboard. So I'm not gonna like harass you if I notice you haven't logged in a few days. But if it's I don't know, April and I haven't seen Punky Deaton logged in, since February, I might be a little concerned. But otherwise, I think you'll be fine. I always communicate through the announcements section, which I always turn into an email, right? So announcements are always emails as well, and live broadcasts. So that way, there's a lot of interaction between me and you at some point. Okay, Adora, your question: would it be better to use a camera from the library or to use a cam on a computer? Um, I would use. Well, I guess there's. It really depends on what you think is better for you, Adore. Um, now, I would make that choice based on what is going to be the most convenient for you to get access to, which maybe the library camera is okay for you, and also which you think is going to be the easiest for you to turn into a file that you can upload. I know that sometimes digital cameras that you get at the library, they have like a proprietary file format that you have to put into another program that will then turn into a video that will then be able to be played. If you want to go through all those steps, that's fine. I really don't care if it's a low quality, very amateurish video. I'm really just watching these to see your comments, or to see your thoughts, to see if you can express yourself verbally pretty well, um, to see how you handle your nonverbal language as a speaker. I'm not really evaluating this as a technical. You really should have done a star wipe here type evaluation of your speeches. So I ultimately, if it's a very low quality webcam video, thumbs up. As long as I can hear you, as long as I can see you, we're good. If beyond that, if you want to get a production level camera from the library, mess around with programs to get high quality video, that's your own deal. Are there going to be any exams in the class? I have not planned any exams, Corey. Um, now, as I do now, maybe this is something I mixed up with last semester, but I think in my syllabus I have raised the specter of maybe there be a pop quiz. But that's one of those things that I do only if I feel like people aren't doing the reading, and I've never had that problem in my one online class that I taught before this one. In fact, I think I even wrote it out. Yeah, I don't even mention it here in the syllabus, which means I really shouldn't have a pop quiz. Um, so yeah, no quizzes or exams are planned. I would really like to focus on getting you to watch the videos / live broadcast, get you to focus on the discussion and written assignments, and getting you on your speeches and working with the technology that way. Um, Again, my experience last semester was that this class is different from other classes in that it's the primary evaluation for you is your speeches. It's not really did you read the assignment? How many coconuts does Huckleberry Finn have? Doing those kinds of like reading guide assignments. It's not quite like that. So I'd rather you focus on making speeches and understanding them. Okay. I think I got okay. Meg asked one last question here. Any more readings in the book? For right now, no. We're not going to move on to chapter 2, which is just a riveting lesson on hearing and listening skills. We're not going to move on from that until you turn in your speeches of introduction, your introduction speeches, whatever you want. All right. We're not going to move on from there. Mostly because I know I have gotten many emails. So if you fell into this camp as well, I've gotten a lot of emails about people struggling to find the textbook. Um, as far as I know, the Ball State Bookstore hasn't run out, but some people don't or can't pay the $66, so they're looking for other copies of it. So I've intentionally planned that we'll have the one reading, which I kind of went over today, and then we'll kind of go quiet on the reading for a while so that people get the textbook. I know that a lot of you also are, because you're off campus, you're waiting for things to be mailed to you, and gosh knows how often that takes or how long that will take. I've But yes, but eventually we will have way more readings in the book, Meg. Eventually, first couple weeks here, not so much, but once a respectable time has passed, we will have readings pretty much every week. For right now, just kind of taking it chill. All right, so I don't think there are any more questions in chat. If you do have any more questions, go ahead and send them to me in an email. I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast for now. My voice is getting real sore. Plus, it's been an hour and 13 minutes. Anyone watching this in the archive is probably going to go crazy. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for now. I want to thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. It was a pretty good turnout. We got like 5 viewers or 4 viewers here. I really appreciate you guys coming out today um, and watching this. So I hope this was helpful. And I'll see you next week on the next broadcast. Yeah, I will, Adori. And you all have a great evening. And again, email me with any questions that you have. I'll post this right up on the Blackboard as soon as I conclude the broadcast. So thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you later.